Thank you for coming today. Your presence here today is an outward expression of your love for David and your love and support for his family. So thank you for coming. We have gathered here today as family and friends to remember David and to celebrate his life. For 20 plus years, David devoted himself to this place, to his staff, to the many, many residents and their families, and to the numerous volunteers who have come here to serve. It is most appropriate that we gather here today to remember David and to celebrate his life. For it is not much of an overstatement at all to say that this is the house that David built. At this time, David's son and his daughter, Brooke and Sean, will come and share some words.
Hi, I'm David's daughter, Brooke. I've chosen a poem by Claire Jones called As We Look Back. As we look back over time, we find ourselves wondering, did we remember to thank you enough for all that you have done for us? For all the times that you were by our sides to help and support us, to celebrate our successes, to understand our problems and accept our defeats, or for teaching us by your example the value of hard work, good judgment, courage, and integrity. We wonder if we ever thanked you for the sacrifices you made to let us have the very best, and for the simple things like laughter, smiles, and the times we shared. If we have forgotten to show our gratitude enough for all the things you did, we're thanking you now, and we're hoping that you knew all along how much you meant to us.
I'm Sean, David's son. Try to get through this. As demonstrated by all these awards and plaques and medals and this place and the relationships here, he had an amazing career, but his legacy to us is that we didn't know about any of this stuff till we were adults. To us, he was just dad. And he was always there for everything. He coached our teams. He was at every school event, I don't know that we knew he had a job. And of course we chose two activities as teenagers that required him to work another 10 years longer than he probably needed to, but also required travel all over the Southeast. We were gone, for my tennis tournaments, 20 weekends a year probably. In all the resort destinations, Fayetteville, Macon, Georgia, staying in motels, and it never felt like he was fitting us in. He was there and fully supportive and behind us in everything we did. And so it's been, kind of amazing to go through and see all the things he accomplished professionally and wonder how in the world he balanced the two. But for him, he was first and foremost a family man. And he carried that on with the grandkids, got together with them got everybody together every summer for the annual family beach trip, because most of our best memories were made at the beach. Yeah, we also thought we grew up at the beach, but we grew up 2 hours inland. But we were always, you know, he was always driving us down there and you know, gave us an amazing childhood. And it's something that we had to, you know, we had to lift up file folders and move things around to find those, you know, these awards, these, you know, medals and all these symbols of his professional success. But I noticed the other day he still has the, you know, the plaques that you get for coaching Little League teams. He had those hung up on the walls from when we were 8, 10 years old. But that was, you know, the fact that he accomplished what he did professionally when those were so clearly his priorities, it really speaks to who he was as a father and a grandfather and a husband, and we'll miss that a lot. But it, you know, he passed that on to us, and those are the steps I most hope to follow in. Is be the kind of father for my boys that he was to me, and that's what he taught us. And as more people come up here to speak, and you hear people he knew in the professional environment, what's striking to me is that, you know, it's very little about his accomplishments. It's that he formed these deep, meaningful relationships with everybody, whether it was his personal life or professional. And I think that'll be reflected in today's comments. But he was a great dad, great grandfather, and we'll miss him a lot. Thank you all for coming.
We have 3 groups that will be sharing some words about David. The first group, and please come in the order that I speak your name, Stuart Dixon, Hope Parrott, and Mary Cooper.
turn on a dime, right? There you go, Stuart.
Thank you. We've come here today, of course, to honor the memory and the life and to honor David himself in every way, David Lacy. He was quite a man. I thought I would take a moment, being honored to speak to you at this sad time, of some of the great experiences that brought about this residence we call Southminster, which many say the house that David built. He would be the first to say, I did not. And I would be the first to say, well, any institution that is striving to be one of the best in the land and is almost there is built on a sound foundation of a number of blocks. But David, your block is the largest. And so I think we can truthfully say the house that David built. He was quite a man. I thought I would share with you just a moment some of my experiences with him when we first started out. Two churches, you know the story, got together. We're going to build, and I was chairman of one committee, and we got the money together and built some cottages and took some people in and built the first tower, started building the first tower. Underway, and we had the biggest mess on our hands we've ever seen. The board found we were losing money hand over fist. The accounting systems were all wrong, and we were over our head with construction costs. And we had hired an executive who was way over his head and fundamentally said, I can't handle this. And we were out to find someone. And the select committee looked and interviewed all over the country saying, we want the very best. And I remember David. And I remember the interview the first time when he looked us all in the eye and said, gentlemen and ladies, if you're looking for a country club manager, I'm not the man. I'm not going to visit and be friendly with a number of the residents. I'm going to do the job, and I do not want to be accused of cliques or favorites or what have you. So I will be around, but I won't be chummy with any of the residents. And I will do a lot of work at home. I am, I think, pretty good at numbers. He was excellent. I think I'm pretty good at numbers. But I'm easily interrupted, and at home I won't be. So I will do a lot of work at home, and I'll probably be criticized for that. So all I would ask you, if I take this job, is that you explain why I am working at home. I haven't gone off to Florida or to Mexico. I'm working, and work he did. He inherited a real mess. And I'm saying within the first month or so, it began to straighten out. And after 3 or 4 months, the ship was righted. And within 6 months, had a keel and a rudder, and we were on our way. He was an unbelievable man with many talents, and he knew his business as well as anybody I've ever known in the hospital or retirement home business, and they're very similar. I don't need to talk to you about his expertise and awards. Look, they're all over the room here. He was recognized nationally as one of the leaders. He was unique in many respects. He has and wore a badge that any really good executive can wear. And there are not that many of them, but when they wear it, they can wear it proudly. And that is, no one that ever worked for him I ever heard say anything bad about. They all liked him, loved him, would walk through a firewall for him. He was that kind of executive. But he knew construction and costs. He knew accounting, and he knew how to run a retirement community. So I second those who say, and I was here from the beginning, and I can take some credit for having an opinion, being here from the start. It is truly a house that David built. And we're quite fortunate to have an executive director now of the same kind who will follow on in the same tradition. So I say our sympathy to the family and our remembrance of David, his cheerful face, his wonderful atonement in every case, and say to him, Godspeed, David. Goodbye. Thank you.
I told someone when I walked in the door this afternoon that I would rather be any place but here. But when I was called to say that Sharon wanted me to speak, I said, of course. I just wish the reason were not what it is. I first have some short remarks from Joe Klutz, who is the current chair of the board. He is at a family wedding in the mountains and could not be here, but he sent me these remarks and asked me to give them to you. Mary and I regret that because of a long-standing commitment to attend a close friend's wedding out of town, we are unable to join you for this wonderful remembrance service. All of us in the Southminster family owe David Lacy an immeasurable debt of gratitude. He joined Southminster shortly after its founding at a time when it was facing a number of challenges. That's to put it mildly. He not only righted the ship, but he set it on a course to become the industry-leading life care facility it is today. I met many business people in my legal career, but few as gifted as David was. I have said many times he had a unique ability to see both the forest and all the trees at the same time, all the while with a heart the size of Texas, a gentle but firm demeanor, and unfailing good humor. I know I speak for the Southminster community in saying that we all miss him very much. My wife, Mary, joins me in sending our heartfelt sympathies to Sharon and the family. Godspeed, David Lacy. David and I went way back. My parents moved to Southminster in January of '99, and David started here in February. So, I watched him work, watched him perform miracles, watched him do so many things that continue to make this place wonderful, which is the reason we chose it for my parents. But it just continued to get better. I just had such a good feeling about him. And then when I became the chair in 2016, that was when our close relationship began. He not only helped me be a better board chair, he guided me along the way when I would attend leading age meetings across the country, and he would help me decide or guide me in deciding which workshops to go to, because he knew, what would help me be a better chair. And he was right every time. At the beginning of my board chairmanship, residences had sold out. There was an active waiting list. He was deep into long-range master site planning, evaluating new opportunities, and pushed the site planning and expansion process forward. He handled rezoning issues and design issues. He negotiated with the neighboring church for purchase of additional land. And along with Kendall Laffey, he responded to favorable market conditions and led a successful refinancing of 2007 bonds, which was a huge benefit for Southminster. He continued the next 2 years outstanding performance. He exceeded all of his ambitious goals, and I loved the fact that he set goals at the beginning of every year and shared them with me. And not once did he miss, and he really exceeded them. He also watched sales of terraces 1 and 2 move forward before the construction was even really started. He obtained bond financing for the new healthcare facility. Demolition and construction began of that. And all the while, he was communicating with residents and staff, developing staff, but keeping all the residents informed and up to date with what was happening. And then that year, he began to assist the executive committee in beginning a search for his successor, because he had told us that he was planning retirement. Those last months as CEO, he never missed a beat, never stopped. While the search committee was working, when we had questions, he answered them, he encouraged us, but he stayed out of it. And it was just a remarkable way to let us make those decisions and feel like we were responsible for finding someone who could not replace him, because it couldn't happen, but who would be just as good as David. And we found him. Ben Gilchrist has just done a superb job in his first years, and David was really a consultant with him, encouraged him, spent time with him, and giving him all the tools he needed to do the job. He then also continued in a consulting role with the construction projects even after his retirement. And his leadership in that role was so critical to the completion of the terraces and healthcare, Embrace Healthcare. But for me, the most important part was that he was such a nice man and so good to those who worked for him. He has the longest tenure of staff members and management team because people loved working for him. And he just guided all of us in the right way to do things. And I am moving out of Charlotte in January because our daughter and her family have moved to the Charleston area, and we happen to have a beach house down there. So we are moving, but I will be back as often as I'm invited, and refuse to give up my connection with this place, because the memories of my parents are so vivid, and the memories of working with David and his management team I will never forget any of it. So, David, I can't believe you're gone, but we are struggling to remain going strong in your memory. Thank you.
Let's see if I can do this. Can you all hear me? I don't know, I feel like this thing needs to be, can you all hear me? Good afternoon, Sharon, Brooke, Sean, all of your family. Welcome to Southminster. I gotta take this off. We're all shocked, right? And I have known David for over 20 years. I've worked with him for over 20 years. It's hard to believe. And you'll hear from many people all the different parts of David. I'm going to share with you the parts that I know as the gentleman who taught me pretty much everything I know about being a leader, about working at Southminster, which I consider my home, frankly, for so many reasons. Forgive me, I'm going to have to read a little bit because I'm emotional. David had a talent for talent. Hope kind of talked about that a little bit. He recognized the attributes in the people he hired that would make a difference at Southminster, as Hope just shared. He always led with an innovative spirit and would often say to me, "Now, Mary, let's think about this for a minute, and let's not just hire somebody and fill that hole, fill that position. Let's think out of the box. What do we need at Southminster?" Many of our current team members here, senior leadership, were all chosen by David. That's so powerful. I was his adopted hire. He would often say to me, "I guess you came with the building." And quite frankly, now that I'm of an age, I think I did come with the building. There were many initiatives throughout the years working with David, so many. But there was always one thing that never, ever, ever left his application towards making a goal be achieved. It was the standard of excellence. It was a standard of excellence that he would always talk to me about and say, no matter what, always do things with integrity. He was an inclusive leader. When I say an inclusive leader, he would always come to our leadership team meetings and he'd hear all the opinions. And he encouraged us all to provide him feedback. He wanted to hear that feedback. He never micromanaged, but instead opened the doors for us to experience the complex world of senior living. Because Southminster was a sleepy little thing when he got here, he encouraged me to become a surveyor for CARF. Not because he was doing it, but he wanted me to explore best practices in our field. He supported those on the management team to consider the Leading Age Leadership Academy when that became fruition, and many of our team members have actually participated and completed that. Of course, the Scholarship Foundation in his name is a testament to the passion to cultivate future leaders in our industry, and David did it so well. His dedication and respect for governance with his board was so important to him. It provided me with a sense of security and pride to be part of such a great community that has such an incredible board. David was a consummate lifelong learner. It was amazing to me how he could be in his office and with his little pencil and his little pad and just his little writing, and there could be all this stuff going on around, but it never bothered David. He was so laser focused. More importantly than a lifelong learner, he was the best teacher I had the privilege of knowing. I was fortunate that David's passion for changing the trajectory of how seniors are served, particularly in the healthcare environment, afforded me the opportunity to be a part of making a real difference in the lives of our seniors. This is what I really, really had a passion for, and boy, did we speak the same language in that regard. He effected change in so many ways, but it was never boastful, it was never demanding. He was collaborative and he was very patient. During my tenure with David, he never doubted me, not for 1 minute, but would always challenge me. He would say to me, "Mary, what do you think you should do in this situation?" Because I'd come blubbering into his office and expect him to give me the answer. Ultimately, the answer was clear, but with great humility, David made me feel like I came up with the solution, when in fact he inspired me, again, to think out of the box, because he was such an incredible teacher. When I reminisce on early days with David, I can remember things like him chasing the deer around the courtyard and the campus. Some of my colleagues in the room, Tess said the other day, she just started cracking up laughing about the whole thing because he was brand new then, and here's this new president CEO, and he's running all around chasing this deer. I mean, you know, he asked me to go to the leading age in Washington, D.C. one time, and it was when I was first getting to know him, and he had this wonderful relationship with the armed services retirement community, and I want to show it to you. So we got in the rental car, or no, because he always drove, so I guess it was his car, and we get there, and he, you know, we talked a lot about making healthcare, you know, making a difference in healthcare and making it a place that is not institutionalized. So he really looked at things like, what are the normalcies? And so he kept talking to me about, he wanted to show me something, and I thought, okay, so we get to this and it's an old building. I'm thinking, what are you going to show me here? This is institutional looking. No, you got to see it. It's a soda machine, and it's in the cafeteria, so we go all the way down to the bottom floor, and I go, okay, it's a soda machine, and he goes, yeah, but it doesn't have soda in it. It delivers beer. I was like, oh, he goes, see, this is cool. And I'm like, okay, I get it. We got to get a machine that delivers beer. You know, okay. And of course, the many years of construction, because that's of course what we just say, is his legacy, is the house that David built. And there were so many houses he built, right? But the funny one was the year when we were renovating, you know, we had to kind of stop the presses. In terms of phase 2, after we built the tower, the North Tower, we had to stop because of the economy. But it bothered him that we couldn't do something for healthcare. And so we did a little facelift that required, you know, you had to like wall off the double-barreled hallway. And one day, you know, you've got a lot of temps or subs or whatever, and one day we were walking down the hall and I hear this, and it's just one of our residents with their cane tapping on the walled-off room that they had basically boarded him up in. And, and afterwards, the resident joked to David that there must be a better way to encourage me to transition to another level of care. I mean, this is really kind of... So all this, and of course, finally, the culmination of the years of planning to open this beautiful, incredible new Embrace Health is just, it takes my breath away. David was the reason for each of those seasons. His kindness, his generosity, and his incredible knowledge of our industry makes me very proud to have been part of his journey, and I will miss him desperately, and grateful for all the lessons that he taught me to be a better leader, a better person, a better colleague, a better friend, a better wife. He's sitting in the back. And I just thought of what poem or what saying could you say about him? And we all know it, Maya Angelou, but it's so true when you think about David. You know, people will forget what you said, and people might forget what you did, but you'll never forget how someone made you feel. And David made me feel very, very good all the time. He empowered me, and I grew in many different areas of my career, and both professionally and personally. So I just want to say thank you, David, for always being an amazing leader, more importantly, a really dear friend. I was going to do a joke. I don't know if I should. Donna, should I? I was supposed to go last, so I thought everybody would be laughing, and then we'd go have a glass of wine. But I'm going to do it anyway. Bear with me a minute. This is David. lost his pencil, which ordinarily, it's about this size. Well, wait, maybe I'll do. I won't take them all out. You get the picture. And so, when I would meet with him weekly, he would have his glasses on, like here, which I never understood because most people wear their glasses here. But he would wear them here when I would walk in, and I would be like. So, anyway, we'll miss you, David. We love you. Should I keep them here? Oh, there is more, trust me.
The second group of those who will be sharing, and if you'd please come in this order, Mike Kelly and John Nicolay.
Good afternoon. Those are tough acts to follow. My name is Mike Kelly. As some of you know, I'm recently retired from a career as a lawyer, developer, and investment banker to the senior living industry. For more than 30 years, it was my pleasure to work alongside David Lacy in matters of senior living strategy and finance, 20 of those during his tenure here at Southminster. I am certainly deeply honored to be asked to offer a few remarks about David, so I've prepared about 45 minutes worth of commentary. Now, I'd like to, there are many, many facets, many dimensions to David as a person, as a professional, and I'm going to focus on one. There's so much where we could dive in, but I'm going to share my perspective from 10,000 feet as to why I think David Lacy was the most extraordinary individual and a consummate professional who leaves behind a profound legacy of excellence and achievement here at Southminster. You've heard from Hope and Stuart and Mary some of their perspectives. And so, unfortunately, some of that will be repeated, but I want you to see this from an outsider's perspective, and perhaps you'll understand how deeply we respected and admired David. David and I first met in 1989 when he was CFO at Carol Woods, working for then the legendary CEO John Diffie. I don't know if John Diffie is with us today, but David was his CFO and looking to undertake some major renovations and expansions to its campus in Chapel Hill. Carol Woods had to raise money both to pay off its existing mortgage and to fund the improvements. Leading the charge for this undertaking, David was willing to consider and pursue creative financing approaches in lieu of the traditional long-term fixed-rate bond financing then preferred by most not-for-profit continuing care retirement communities, or CCRCs. Mr. Diffie, of course, had the good sense to give David free rein to pursue his instincts. The result of these efforts was that Carol Woods issued the first ever variable rate demand bond on behalf of a nonprofit CCRC in the state of North Carolina. Now, that in our business, that's big news. The real result, however, was that Carol Woods, and by extension its residents, saved hundreds of thousands of dollars of interest expense that otherwise would have to be paid on higher cost fixed rate debt. From that experience, I knew that David Lacy was a special talent, even a quiet, self-effacing, and easygoing talent. Despite his understated and low-key manner, he revealed himself to be both extremely diligent and intellectually curious. He deftly and confidently managed complex issues and people in multiple professional disciplines, and he displayed core characteristics in all of his dealings with others that I believe define who he was. Namely, grace, gratitude, and generosity of spirit. After 13 years of service at Carol Woods and a 3-year stint in Texas, David was recruited to become Southminster's new CEO. Today we observe with pride and wonder the glorious community sitting on this beautiful site in the middle of some of the loveliest neighborhoods in all of Charlotte. In 1999, however, when David arrived as CEO, Southminster was profoundly in need of some repurposing and repositioning. I say this delicately, but thankfully Stuart Dixon said, straightforward, it was a mess. Thank you, Stuart. While Southminster's good name and reputation were unimpeachable, below the surface was perhaps a more nuanced story. Its finances were anemic, its operations were undynamic, and its physical facilities were unsuited for the impending wave of restless baby boom retirees just over the horizon. Looking for steady, yet dynamic new leadership, the Board of Trustees, Tate and Hope and that stellar group of men and women who have led this organization, brought David Lacy to lead Southminster. David went right to work in developing the long-term vision for Southminster, both in discerning the proper facility services and programs that were needed to serve the Charlotte market, but also in building a solid financial profile necessary to secure Southminster's long-term success. In order to buy time, however, for this vision to unfold, it was necessary to conduct a bit of financial engineering. We had a little work to do to sort of stop the bleeding by refinancing Southminster's existing debt, then outstanding at a tax-exempt interest rate, if you can believe this, 7%. In 2002, reprising his experience from Carol Woods, David oversaw the refinancing of most of that debt with another variable rate demand bond offering, reducing the interest rate below 3% and saving Southminster and its residents hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest costs. No sooner was the ink dry on those documents for that 2002 financing that David began convening the larger team of architects, engineers, contractors, marketing experts, bankers, lawyers, and consultants, many of whom are with us today, that would be necessary to develop and execute that grand vision for Southminster. With continuing solid support from the Board of Trustees, David adroitly guided this unwieldy group of professionals over a period of several years, a process that can properly be likened to herding cats. Many of those cats are with us today. And he did it all with the grace, gratitude, and generosity of spirit that personified him. Keep in mind, he's managing all of this activity despite his other full-time job of directing the 24/7 operations of a complex enterprise with millions of dollars in annual revenue, hundreds of residents and staff, and hundreds of thousands of square feet of specialized buildings. So the first step toward this grand vision was a $90 million repositioning financing in 2007 that added 89 beautiful, large, new independent living units, added the marvelous wellness and aquatic center that today serves as the crossroads for the healthy lifestyle preferences of an emerging younger senior population. And as Mary alluded, we did some perfume the pig activities on the health center because we couldn't afford to do much more than that. As a result of this expansion completed in 2009, Southminster grew to 265 independent living units with far larger and more diverse floor plan options. Its cash reserves were greatly enhanced to reach the upper tier of industry benchmarks, and its other financial and operating metrics grew in strength and stability to further propel Southminster toward the best-in-class status it enjoys today. Hope alluded to a refinancing in 2016 of those 2007 bonds. And remember, I'm an investment banker, and so to a hammer, everything's a nail, and so to an investment banker, everything's a deal. But that deal she referred to saved Southminster $9 million in present value interest savings, or more than $650,000 per year. The culmination of David's vision for Southminster was, of course, the $123 million expansion begun in 2018 and just recently completed in the midst of the COVID pandemic. Once again, David herded cats, his team, with special thanks to John Nicolay, who you'll hear from, David Segmiller, Mario McKenzie, Alan Robinson as trusted advisors, to deliver both the magnificent Terraces 1 and 2 buildings and the glorious 200,000 square foot Embrace Health building, any one of which would be the envy of any senior living provider anywhere in the country. Today, Southminster is rightly considered a state-of-the-art residential and wellness community, serving as home to more than 460 residents and featuring solid financial metrics that will capably support Southminster's mission well into the future. Now, I offer this somewhat long and involved history, though in the interest of time, I will say that I skipped over many highlights. But I do so simply as a basis for my perspective on David's life and career, and they are these. First, that he was a creative and intellectually curious visionary who always wanted to know why and how things worked and how they could be made better, whether it be in matters of architectural design, construction methodology, marketing techniques, complex financial instruments, or any other dimension of senior living. Second, that balancing this vision was an indefatigable work ethic that enabled David, as we've seen time and again, to coordinate and direct the actions of multiple professional disciplines toward achieving a common goal. In doing so, he never asked more of anyone than he was willing to give of himself. And for this, he was admired, appreciated, and respected by all whom he encountered. And third, and this has been alluded to, the house that David built, that little exists here at Southminster that does not deeply reflect the imprint of David's head, hands, and heart. As a result, I believe this grand institution will serve as a monument to his service and commitment for generations to come. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the boundless support of his family, Sharon, his loving and devoted wife of 49 years, Brooke and Sean, their 2 children, and Jackson, Blair, Harrison, and Grayson, their 4 grandchildren, who were the light of David's life. David's passing poses a reminder to us all to live each day to the fullest, to be ever mindful of the needs of others, and to eagerly embrace both the opportunities and challenges we inevitably encounter in life. Were he with us today, I believe David would encourage us all to live our lives with the same grace, gratitude, and generosity of spirit that guided his. And if we did, oh, what a wonderful world it would be for us all. Thank you.
Well said, Mike. Good afternoon. I'm John Nicolay. I had the privilege, now that I hear what I've heard in the last half hour, to be very much a part of the house that David built. And what an honor that was, and what a good time it was. And that's part of what I want to be able to tell you. I retired from commercial construction career a few years ago. I got to know David, well, I've probably known him for maybe 15, 16, 17, 18 years. But most of that time was running into each other on an airplane to or from Charlotte, going to some senior housing industry meeting in wherever. And the senior housing industry is a very small fraternity, and it's got a lot of good people, like David, like Mike, others in this room. But we just struck up somewhat of a friendship in this casual 3 times a year seeing each other on the airplane. After I retired, maybe 6 years ago, and shortly after retirement, knowing David's stature in the industry that I enjoyed being a part of, I had a conversation with him. I think we went to Trios for lunch, if I recall, and told him I'm retiring, and you know that. And we felt like we were on a similar path in terms of career and timing of things. And I said, I'm retiring, but I'm not ready to not work. I'd like to do something. And I just would like, David, you to know that. Now, the salesman in me already knew from my friend David Segmiller from Perkins Eastman that David was working on a master plan to expand Southminster. But I was naively suggesting, if you ever need any help, let me know, because I'm looking to do something. That led to a call back eventually, and I had said, David, I know you are very good at what you do, but I know you have a day job, and this construction thing maybe is something I could help you with. And I guess he thought about that for a while, and he called me and said, can you help me? And I was eager to say yes, because Southminster had a great reputation. David had a great reputation. What a neat opportunity. What I didn't know, I knew he was good at his job in running a community. What I didn't know is how much he loved the design and construction process. I firmly believe he should have been an architect, but he chose a different career path. But he could have been a very good architect. Of the CEOs like David in the industry that I met a lot of good people who were good at what they did, but I never met one, and this is a reoccurring theme, I never met anyone who was as engaged and curious and inquisitive about things having to do with bricks and mortar. As dull as that might sound, he was into it. So we worked closely over the last 5.5 years, Don, something like that, time flies, with several architects, contractors, architects, engineers, helping to choreograph this latest piece in the terraces and the healthcare center, the latest piece in the house that David built. And I knew I was on the right track in my thinking, both Brooke and Sean. As soon as you stood up here, I realized I had the privilege of getting to know and working with the same person that you grew up with. Completely different context, but the same person. There wasn't a detail that David didn't like. I was curious to know if that would get a reaction from you. He was drawn to details. And it was a huge strength of his, and that's part of how he made things better than they might have otherwise been. I'm not sure he always had the answer to his own question, but he knew enough to ask the right question of the right people to get to a better place. Now, clearly, in the relationship that he and I had, he was the decider. I mean, that was understood. He was clearly going to make the decisions. My role there was to help in any way that he could use help. In his zeal for knowledge and interest and desire to be inquisitive, for example, there was more than one occasion when we were 2 hours into a 90-minute meeting with contractors and architects, and David is still asking questions. David was doing what David does. And then out in the hallway, they were generally in this room, out in the hallway, walking back up toward his office, he would say, "John, we got to shorten these meetings up." I never had the courage to question that. Now, on large projects in design and construction, there are surprises, there are challenges, there are bumps in the road, there are things that don't quite go right. There are some discussions. I won't call them arguments, but there could be some heated debates on things. I never saw David angry in any of those circumstances. Now, I think I learned over time to realize that I think he's angry, but he really didn't express it, and at least not in that room. And he was extremely respectful of everyone in the room and their role and their place, and I think that was part of why I never saw it. Now, I might, if I went back in his office, he might on few occasions express how that was very frustrating to him, but I have to tell you that really didn't happen very often. I never heard him say anything negative about a person, but there might have been something that occurred that he didn't really agree with. In his and my working relationship, I would be more animated and more likely to blurt out something that maybe wasn't very tasteful, but I just couldn't, the contractor in me had to occasionally just say what he thought. And David's response, this was only one-on-one that this ever happened. It happened more than once, though, where I would say something like this, and he would look at me and say, "John, really?" Now, I don't know whether you ever heard that growing up, but I suddenly felt like I was kind of at home in the living room. And I was 17 years old, and I had done something that Dad was not quite in agreement with, but he never said, "I don't agree with that." We would walk the projects, the terraces and the healthcare center, and I was always impressed at how inquisitive he was, how curious he was, how eager he was to understand something was the way it was, or that he didn't like the way something looked. And he had I thought for somebody who wasn't a construction person, he had an amazing grasp for what to look for, and to ferret out quickly something that just maybe didn't look right. So the past 5 years, to kind of summarize things, from David's standpoint, I don't know. It might have been a stressful period of time, but from my point of view of David, I think he thoroughly enjoyed these last 5 years. Just to be a part of the expansion and the brick and mortar piece of this thing that he got to be a part of. I think if there is such a thing that brings us human beings back in another life in some fashion, I have no doubt that somewhere I will walk down the street and see David Lacy and Associates Architects. The next David Lacy, I believe Dave Segmiller will be an architect. So David's, figuratively speaking, fingerprints are all over these buildings that I've had the privilege to be engaged with him in. There's hardly a detail, either something you can see or even more things behind the walls and the ceilings that you can't see, things that he touched and had opinions in and made decisions on. Sometimes my role was to make sure that decision got made when it needed to be made, but you knew who was in charge and who had the right judgment to make the right answers. So if you ever need a David Lacy fix, if you ever need to feel David, I would say go in the terraces or go in the health center. Just look around. He is there. Thanks for allowing me to be here, Shane.
The third group that we'll be sharing, and two of those are presently out of the room, but hopefully we'll be back very quickly. So I'm going to ask Chuck Wright, a friend and neighbor, to come and share. And I see the others are coming too. And no, I'm not going to share. So unfortunately, David got my wife and I somewhat hooked on this. I can't afford it. My name is Chuck Wright. My beautiful wife, Jeannie, and I live beside the Lacys for
15 years. I think we're right at 15 years now. Time flies. Friends, I want to point out something hugely important before I start. What Brooke and Justin did, and I've been in their shoes before, it was remarkable what you read. You did wonderfully. You really did. It's not easy. A side note, if you'll bear with me, the reason the Lacys were allowed to buy their house was a lot due to my wife and I. And what I mean by that is every single person that would come by, we would distract them, whatever the case would be. They were too old, they were too young, too many children. So literally, as God is my witness, the last family that came, an SUV pulled up. I didn't know they made SUVs this large. All I could see was a sea of heads of young children. So the gentleman gets out. I was in the front yard. We shook hands and met. He was too nice, very nice young man. His wife walks around the SUV to where I could see her, and she was pregnant. And I thought, I see about 20 in there already. Here comes more. So I'm praying to think, how can I somewhat divert this group as well? So we're standing to where here's my house and here's the Lacys, and if you look through, you can see a pool and tennis court that are the apartment complex right behind us. So I can't think of anything. I'm drawing a blank. And the lady asked me, and the Lord had to be speaking to her. She said, Chuck, does it get noisy around here? I said, yes, it does. You can see it. You've got the tennis courts. People hit balls over all the time. You're cutting your grass. It's a disaster. There's pool parties. It's just, the next group that pulled up was the Lacys, and we've loved them ever since. I've got some words written here that, in my heart, I think describes David. The first one I have is humility. The definition of humility is a low or modest view of one's own importance. I think we know who we're talking about. Modest, unassuming or moderate in the estimation of one's abilities and achievements. Well, you can look on the tables, we've got that covered. Caring, displaying kindness and concerns for others. I think we got that covered. Sharon, I reached out to Bucknell University earlier this week. They replied immediately. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is a statement that I received from the dean's office, Freeman College of Management from Bucknell University. This is from the desk of Megan McDonald. Chuck, please give our sincere condolences to Miss Lacy and the family. He was a loyal supporter of his alma mater, and we are blessed, there's that word again, we are blessed to have received his trust and respect over the many years. She continues that she is asking your permission. They will run a full article on David in the Bucknell magazine upcoming. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for your kind words there. So I'm going to touch on a little bit of what I have learned, amazingly, about David's educational background, in part. Bucknell, he was there from 1967 to 1971. And Sean and I were just talking about this the other day. He was president of the university, class president, in 1971. So if you think about this for a minute, in 1971, you've got some huge parallels going on in the country. You've got the Vietnam War. You've got integration in the South that was maybe the most parallel extreme in our nation's history. Racism. So you can be assured that students and other members, faculty, were coming to David for answers. That was a huge responsibility in 1971 as a class president. How do I know that he did a good job? Well, in 1971, his senior year, he received the Thelma Johnson Showalter Prize. This is in honor of Miss Johnson, who was also in the class of 1929, and is for the graduating senior that in the judgment of the president and committee shall have shown the greatest potential in the field of public and community affairs. Sounds like what he did for the rest of his career. One thing I was going to point out personally that's a little bit embarrassing. I noticed that some of the information that Ms. McDonald sent me from Bucknell, the entrance to get into Bucknell is a 3.56 GPA. Not shabby. So in 1975, when Chuck Wright graduated from Garinger High School, had I sent my transcripts to Bucknell, wouldn't have been pretty. Wouldn't have been pretty. Also, I have learned that graduates from Bucknell, there is a high percentage of CEOs in the pharmaceutical market, vice presidents, chairman of the board, and other administrative staff that have graduated from Bucknell. Very, very highly academic rated institution. When David left Bucknell, he went to UNC Chapel Hill. Great decision there. I'm a Tar Heel fan as well. And to keep everything we've said thus far with David, what perspective this is. He's there for 2 years to get his master's degree, yet he's co-teaching undergraduate studies as well. So not only is he trying to get his master's degree, once again, David is reaching out to help somebody. Amazing. Recently, maybe a month or so ago, Sharon asked me if I could use some plants that were over at the side of her yard. I went over, took a look at them. I thought, Sharon, that's great. Thank you for letting me know I can use them. This is great. So I'm over there one afternoon. It's blazing hot. I'm sweating profusely. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I just want to get these plants out of Sharon's yard and take them over to my yard. I look up out of the corner of my eye, and there's David standing on the deck. I said, hey, David, good afternoon. How are you? He said, you know, Chuck, I've been watching you, and I thought, you know, now, if you back up with me and David, our history for half a second, if he said, now, you know, Chuck, words of wisdom were coming. I would brace myself. So he said, you know, Chuck, if you take the shovel, these plants are very delicate. I said, I know, David. I've already thrown away more than I've dug up. Thank you for your keen observation. He said, you know, just take the shovel, angle it, and so forth, and you can get the plants out very easily. I thought, okay. Please go back inside. So he goes back in. I'm making sure that he cannot see me, because I know to take this to heart. Of course you do. It came from David. You better do what the man said. So I make sure he can't see me. I'm taking the shovel and doing like he told me to do. And I said under my breath, damn it, he's right again. We'll miss him dearly. The last piece that I have in closing is something that I just simply call for my friend David. David, I look over from my driveway into your shop, knowing God's will has allowed you to bless us all until now it's time to stop. God gave David the ability to fix and build anything. Now David is where the angels sing. One day, with God's blessing, I hope to see my friend David. Until that day comes, I will keep a warm heart in knowing that you blessed us all time and time again. Sharon, Brooke, Sean, may God bless and keep you. And I trust and know in my heart that God will bless us all and keep the memory of David Lacy warm in our hearts. Thank you. Amen.
Chuck, I have one question. What am I supposed to do with this? Yes. I grew up as a Southern Baptist. We did not drink in front of each other. But I became a member of Myers Park Baptist Church, and we do drink in front of each other. We have two others that are going to be sharing with us, Gail Lacy and Betty Lacy.
Thank you all for being here to honor my brother David. My parents, Betty and Pren Lacy, had 3 children. David, who definitely enjoyed the role of being big brother, my lovely sister Anne, and me, Gail. We also spent our early years surrounded by nearby grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, and from both sides of the family, and many, many friends. Mom and Dad were devoted parents. They provided us with an excellent education, exposed us to the arts, music, literature, sciences, nature, and different cultures. And especially David got to experience a year in South Africa as a Rotary Exchange student after his senior year of high school, where, of course, he had many amazing experiences, and we were lucky to enjoy vicariously through his regular installments that would come through cassette tapes or letters, and that we'd eagerly await. Mom and Dad also taught us the importance of work, contributing to society, and treating everyone with respect. David was given a strong foundation for life, and as you all know it, he used it well. I have many fond memories of our family life. Here are just a few snippets. Summer days, harvesting baskets of black walnuts in our yard, playing bocce in the court that David and Dad built in the backyard, and going to the pool and the tennis court, and as you know, David excelled at tennis. Bonfire-lit tobogganing parties on the hill behind our house, skiing, and skating on local ponds. Hearing strains of Moon River and of Herb Alpert coming from David's bedroom as he practiced his trumpet. He never became a great trumpeter, but it certainly was the start of his lifelong love of jazz. And, you know, people have talked about how intellectually curious he was and how he always liked to learn. And so you can imagine having the lively debates around the dinner table every night about the events of the day. Those are very, and especially debating with Mom. They they would have some amazing conversations, and I used to feel like they seemed like they were arguing, but maybe it was the same point after all. I just, it was 7 years younger. I just was trying to figure it all out. We also, spent many wonderful holidays and special occasions with extended family, all those grandparents and aunts and uncles, filled with laughter and good food. Christmas was one of David's favorite holidays. He'd tune into Thanksgiving music the day after Thanksgiving, probably dreaming about the beautiful and in his later years, very tall Christmas tree that he would have that would adorn his lovely home and all of the wonderful times that he would be spending with his own family and friends. And then there was the summer when David's job was to paint the March's home. My father, Pren, and Ray, Sharon's father, and Rosalie, they had befriended each other through work, and so Ray and Rosalie and my family, we would get together occasionally. And when David had a summer painting job, Sharon was home that summer, if I recall, and it somehow just became the perfect opportunity for he and Sharon to start to get to know each other. And it really was the beginning of their lifelong love. And soon he and Sharon were raising the wonderful family of their own. As an adult, it was a treat for me to spend time with David and Sharon, watching Sean and Brooke grow up, and then seeing David in the middle of a bunch of rambunctious grandchildren. And we've all heard about how wonderful their family lives were. In addition, though, even though much of his energy was in the family of his own, he always would welcome his extended family in and was always there for us. If we, in any serious occasions or, coming up arriving at 6 a.m. to UNC Hospital, to be with one of us for a surgery, or vacuuming the church, unbeknownst to me, that my husband and I got married in while my mother and sister were making an amazing mural of illustration of the owl and the pussycat for the reception area up on the wall. So he just would always be supportive of all of us. So David, I and all of us in the family and all of you here will miss you. We'll miss your hugs, your support, your advice, your teasing, and your imagination. I will smile when I remember all the love that you gave your family and your incredible contributions to elder care throughout your career. I knew he had done amazing work. I always wondered, how did he ever learn all of the amazing stuff about financing? But he did somehow, and the world is a better place for that. David, you are woven into the fabric of my life, and for that, I am grateful. Thank you.
Take your mask off. I won't be able to hear you.
Take it on this side. David was the firstborn of my husband and I, and we had the 3 children. And he was just so wonderful and so much fun right from the beginning. And he was so very thoughtful. I remember when he and Sharon were getting married, he came to the church was full, but David came in before the ceremony began to talk to my father, who is blind, and that was the kind of thoughtfulness that he showed throughout life. He was just so thoughtful like that. And when he was at Bucknell University, I remember that was when the Kent State riots were going on, and he was president of the student body at the time. And I remember at graduation, the president of Bucknell told my husband and I that it was thanks to David that they didn't have the riots that they had at Kent State. So he had a way of just handling people that was just amazing. We'll miss you, David, and we love you so much.
Thank you for sharing with us. Before the closing prayer, there are several things I just need to quickly share with you. Following the prayer, I would ask that you please remain seated as the family is escorted to the area for the reception, and the reception will be in this area right behind us. And of course, you are invited to join with the family in the reception, at the reception. The door that we will be using to go out to the area for the reception is this door right here. Okay? That would be the quickest and the safest doors to use. Also, if you have not had an opportunity to come by and look at the pictures and all the awards and recognitions pertaining to David and pictures pertaining to him and his family, I would encourage you on your way out to just come by. Hope you'll do that. Also, the wonderful video that has been put together by Southminster, the video will be running if you'd like to see more of that. And now for the closing prayer, I'm going to share a very, very short scripture that will inform and shape the prayer. This is from the Apostle Paul, some of his words to the church at Rome. I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all of creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. So let us pray together. We are grateful, O God, for David. Thank you for giving him to us. We are grateful to David for his 20-plus years of service to this place, to his staff, to the many residents and their families, and to the volunteers who came here to serve. We know, O God, that your love for David, like your love for each one of us, is a love that will not let him go. It is our faith that David has died unto you, and you and that great community of saints have received him and welcomed him home. And he has heard the words, well done, good and faithful servant. We pray now for David's family, his devoted staff, and his many friends. In the days, weeks, months, and years ahead, help each one to grieve in their own way and in their own time. And may our memories of David continue to encourage us, to guide us, to challenge us, to inspire us. And may our memories of him bring us smiles and laughter as well as tears. These things we pray in the name of Jesus, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and at the same time, a man of great joy. Amen. The family will now be escorted out. Craven is going to lead the family.